My commission for the UK NG season consists of a building wrap and a series of pots made in collaboration with local makers. I work with a lot of different materials, I work in a lot of different ways. I've always been excited at the idea of that you could sort of speak in different voices almost through materials. Sometimes having a conversation, but sometimes you're saying the same thing. I'm excited by the sort of possibilities working in different contexts, sort of offers you as an artist. So the idea of kind of going to a country and responding to what's there as the sort of grounding for making a body of work or a work even seemed, was exciting. So there was something about that appealed to me about the sort of makeup of the city and the way people are there, the way people behave or the way people dress or the way just sort of the everyday seemed appealing to me. I quickly sort of became interested in the idea. I think it's also that thing where cities aren't that built up, everything's quite low, so when you do see like a block, it's like this real sort of sculptural, imposing thing. Lots of space around a large building, and so that just as a thing was exciting to me, that it's like, oh, okay, these buildings are sort of sculptural, and that you could kind of clad one or cover one or like just interfere with one, and that be like the most public kind of direct thing you could do. The sort of things that I'd responded most strongly to while I was there was this sort of outdoor studio run by Nike Art Centre, which is a sort of place for sort of women to learn sort of different dyeing techniques and all different sorts of things to do with fabric, and they have these sort of outdoor dyeing pots and this outdoor studio, and I'm interested in kind of colour and how it gets into things, and sort of how like a ceramic pot, the colour sits on top of it like a case almost, whereas this it's in it, and you can really see that it's sort of soaked up into the fabric, sort of every sort of bit of pigment is in the fabric. And so I was quite excited about that being enlarged to like a sort of grand scale where you sort of these tiny little splodges of colour become like gigantic splodges, and that being sort of shown, but it's very hard to show texture on that scale. So I knew that I wanted a partner thing for the building, that it wouldn't just be this big monolithic kind of things sort of implanted in the landscape, that it would be this gesture that sort of had something to go alongside it. So I'd been working in Glasgow with a ceramicist to make a series of vessels that have kind of existed in different projects. When Garnet makes those, he tends to make them in sections and then join them. So his skills as a ceramicist are mind-blowing. Like, he's done it all his life. He's incredible. So I haven't got all my life yet. Like, I wanted to make it now. It's that thing, like, I need it now. And in my mind, I just had assumed that, of course, we'll just find a ceramicist who has a wheel. And of course, they'll be different. They might not be able to make them the way Garnet makes them, but that we'd negotiate and we'd find a way to make them. And so the sort of people we met in Abuja who helped us, I sort of explained this process, and he sort of had this idea of this village where these women make pots that they sell on the roadside, like really quite big, quite substantial, amazing pots for gardens and houses and things. And so we were taken there, and I took my templates and had the same idea, and then it became quite apparent straight away that it wasn't going to be anywhere near how I work with Garnet, and that they don't work with a wheel, that they didn't really understand what, it's that thing of not really understanding why I was doing it, what it was for, what it meant, like, so it was quite a lot of wrangling and explaining. And then I think out of sheer frustration, the woman just went off and got a big bag of clay. She just stood in front of the clay and just started pummeling it and pulling it up and walking around it. So she was the wheel, walking around this piece of clay and pulling up a pot. And quickly too, like it was a similar sort of time frame for a wheel actually. And within like 10-15 minutes, she'd made this sort of this pot that was based on the form I'd shown her. And it wasn't like Garnet, where it was match for match millimetre, but that was enough for me. Like, she'd interpreted it in a creative way, which is kind of all I expect in a way. It's interesting how things change and get mediated and sort of become something else. And so like straight away it was like, that's perfect, that's the process, like that works for me. And so the idea is now for her to make like a group, like say 10 or 12 of these vessels, different vessels based on my designs. I think as the project sort of developed and sort of becomes a bit of a constellation of things, it's just that idea of like, okay, how do we pin down, not necessarily pin down, but how do you kind of reflect all this activity? So it's not literally just about me going to Nigeria saying, I'm going to wrap a building and make some pots. Here it is. It's sort of been this really sort of organic, quite enjoyable process. Like, where's the work? Like, is it this big building, like, or is it the pots, or it's not? It's all the things that happen around it and in between it.